Greetings and welcome to Let's Talk About Books, baby, where we talk with your favorite LGBTQ plus authors. I'm Anita Kelly, and my guest today is Jeff Copeland. Hello, Jeff.
Hey there, Anita. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This is exciting. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm very excited.
And I am so interested to learn about your new release called Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn. First of all, who is Holly Woodlawn?
Okay, so Holly Woodlawn. Holly Woodlawn was one of Andy Warhol's most endearing superstars in the early 1970s. She starred in Andy Warhol's Trash, and she created such a sensation that a famous movie director named George Cukor tried to have her nominated for an Academy Award. Then Lou Reed sang about her in his song, Walk on the Wild Side, which became a huge hit. So that firmly established her as a pop culture celebrity. Now, when I met Holly in 1988, she was pretty much a has-been. She was washed up, living in a squalid Hollywood apartment and trying to rekindle her career.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sad, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, she was a trans pioneer in cinema, I think, really.
Yeah.
There was Holly Woodlawn, Jackie Curtis, Candy Darling. They were the three trans Warhol superstars. Although Candy was the most trans, and Holly was trans. Jackie wasn't so trans, and they were all very different. But Holly, well, I mean, I didn't know the other two because they had died back in many years before Holly and I had met.
Yeah.
So,
Has Holly passed?
yeah, Holly passed back, I think it was 2015.
Oh, so not so long ago.
Right. And the big deal about this was it was Academy Awards night, okay? And I never watched the Academy Awards, but that night I was over at a friend's house and they were on, and he was in the kitchen making dinner and I was sitting there watching the telecast, and they were doing the in memoriam segment.
Yeah.
And up popped Holly Woodlawn.
Oh my goodness.
I about fell out of my chair.
Oh.
Yeah, it was wonderful because it was so great of the Academy to honor her.
Yes. That's so heartwarming. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And so basically, Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn, it's a celebratory memoir, and it's a tribute. It takes place in Los Angeles during the late 1980s, early 90s, and it's about my friendship with Holly. And basically, it's about two Hollywood underdogs who are struggling to make a better life for themselves, with some naughty parts thrown in.
We love the naughty parts.
Right.
And I had no idea that Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed starts out with Holly came from Miami, FLA, hitchhiked her way across the USA. I totally remember that.
Do you want me to play it for you? Because I have it queued up.
Oh, sure. Go for it.
Yeah, right? I
Yeah.
thought you'd like this. Can you hear it?
Not yet. No. If you're sharing an audio, you have to go down to where it says audio at the bottom of your screen.
Oh,
And I think there is a way to share.
well, it's on a different computer. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just can't hear it.
yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Everybody, listeners out there, check out if you haven't, and if you're not familiar with it, Lou Reed had a song called "Walk on the Wild Side." It was a huge hit in its day, and it starts out with a little tribute to Holly.
Yeah, Holly came from Miami, FLA. Yeah, and it's basically her little story in a nutshell,
That's so cool. That's so
you
cool.
know?
Oh, yeah. So,
So,
what was it like to hang with Holly?
Well, well, Holly was wonderful. She became my best friend, but I should
Oh,
explain that the reason why we came together is at the time we met in 1988. Holly was 42. I was probably about 26. I'd been in Hollywood for 3 years, and I was this aspiring screenwriter. And I was very desperate for a break. And I'd worked in the film and television business as a production assistant at Paramount. And I would write my scripts, but I couldn't get anybody of merit to read them. And what I realized is a friend of mine directed a movie, and it's launched his career. And so I thought, you know what? I just can't write a movie. I gotta make one. So I was on the search for a star for my
mm,
little independent movie, and I came across Holly Woodlawn, and I thought, this is who I need to be in my movie.
yeah.
And so I was hungry for opportunity, and that's why we came together to work on a film.
Oh, wow.
But what that film led to was me. It never got off the ground. What happened was we got distracted with the opportunity of writing her life story,
Okay.
which was published as A Low Life in High Heels, and that came out in 1991.
Okay.
So, and Holly was just, I mean, you said what was it like to hang out with her? It was like a magical whirlwind.
Really?
For the most part, it was fabulous.
Yeah.
You know, there were a lot of challenges. I mean, you know, the biggest challenge was Holly was an alcoholic,
Mm,
and that was difficult to deal with at times.
yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
it was a great time.
Did Holly ever get sober before she passed?
I don't think she ever did.
Mm, okay. That's sad. That's
I
sad.
mean, I'm trying to think how could she even be drinking when at the end, but
Yeah.
she 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 was in pretty bad shape toward the end,
Mm, oh,
and that was
that's,
heart-wrenching.
yeah.
So,
It's so cool that
it,
you're telling her story, though. Like,
well, I should clarify. So, Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn is not a biography about Holly Woodlawn because Holly's story had already been told in the way that she wanted to tell it.
mm-hmm,
And that was A Low Life in High Heels.
mm-hmm.
But this new story is like a coming of age memoir about our journey together in getting her book written, which I know sounds like a real snooze, right? A book about writing a book.
Not
It's
at
really a
all.
rag. It was a rags to riches kind of Cinderella story,
Oh, that's
and
so
I think it
cool.
will resonate because you know, well, it's really hard when you can't be yourself and you've always had to hide who you really are,
Yeah.
and there's still so many people who have to do that. Um, I grew up at a time when being gay was the worst thing you could be, and I was bullied and harassed. And you know, kids who are bullied and harassed, pressured to be something they're not, they can be pushed to extremes. Now, in Holly's case, she was pushed to the extreme of running away at the age of 16, hitting the streets of New York, and becoming a teenage prostitute. In
Oh,
my case, I blew off high school and became a teenage entertainment journalist.
wow. That's awesome.
We're living at a time right now where these kids, there's so much violence, especially in school nowadays. And I think one of the most important chapters in Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn is chapter one, because it clearly sets up what it's like to be a bullied child who is
Oh,
misplaced in society. And I don't think a lot of people understand what that's like.
yeah. Yeah.
When you grow
People,
up and everyone's telling you that you're a loser, I mean,
yeah.
it's really awful.
It is. And people talk about bullying all the time, but I don't think that unless you're a victim of being bullied or you've witnessed it, that I don't think people truly understand it.
No, I don't think they do. I actually have a friend of mine whose son he's like 16 years old and he's bullied. And I
Oh,
think, gosh, how is this even going on in 2025?
yeah. Yeah, it
Haven't these
does.
people, don't these school administrators know? I actually called the school I pay my taxes to, it's supposed to be this fantastic AAA rated school. And I said, what kind of anti-bullying programs do you guys have in place
Mm-hmm. What
to
they
curtail? You know what? They couldn't even answer the question.
really?
I'm not kidding.
Uh, that's yeah, that's disheartening because I would think, as you said, 2025. That like I know it still goes on, but I would think that schools have prevention programs in place. As
No, you know what they sent me? They sent me a bunch of legalese, like these rules and regulations. If you get caught bullying someone, this is the first offense. This is the second, this is like your punishments, but they don't have anything in place to condition
educate,
these kids on accepting people who are different.
yeah, like you need education and prevention.
Right. And
Not
you know what? Bullied kids, they need mentors.
yeah,
They need to know they're okay
yep,
and they need to be inspired. And
yeah.
I found my inspiration in a woman named Rona Barrett.
Oh, I remember Rona Barrett. Oh my goodness. Oh
Yes.
my goodness.
So here's what happened. I was in eighth grade. I was this bullied kid. And my mother, we would always go to the library and get our books. And my
Hmm.
mother brought home Rona Barrett's autobiography. It's called Miss Rona. And I found it, on the table in the living room, and I just cracked it open. And it's about this ugly, mistreated little girl who has a handicap. She's got a dystrophy. She can't walk correctly. She's being picked on mercilessly by these kids. And and then she becomes this beautiful Hollywood entertainment reporter on television.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and I read this book, and that's when I went to my mother and I said, you know what, Mom? I want to be an entertainment journalist when I grow up. I want to interview movie stars. And my mother looked at me and she said, well, why wait? Just go do it now. I'm like, well, I'm just a kid. What do you mean? And my mother said, you know what? People will bend over backwards to help a kid, but the minute you're out of college, you're going to become a threat.
That's true.
So my mother, she was very smart and creative and an outside the box thinker.
Yeah.
And she came up with this strategy that got me into interviewing really famous people that were
Re-
flying into St. Louis to do theater or to do benefits. And I wound up working as an entertainment journalist for this newspaper called the St. Louis County Star. It had like a circulation of just under a million. And it was a big deal for a kid. So here's the irony.
it's a big deal
I
for an
couldn't
adult.
get, what?
It's a big deal for an adult.
Right. So, but I could not get a date for the prom. I
Oh,
couldn't hang out with the cool kids,
yeah.
but yet I could go over to see Cloris Leachman
Yeah.
and interview her for an hour.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That is really great. Your mom sounds like just like a wonderful person, just like a
She was
creative
kind of
person.
a person. She was quite bored, and but she taught me how to. Well, I'll tell you what she taught me how to be pushy. Sorry, my phone's gone off. She taught me how to not take no for an answer,
Uh-huh.
push through the bullshit, and make things happen. And sometimes you just can't do that through the traditional, conventional
No,
means.
you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You are so right. So
So,
did you remain friends with Holly like throughout the years, or did you guys kind of lose touch and
well, here's what happened. So Holly and I came together. Well, first to work on a movie, then to write her life story, and we. Here's what happened. After I had to audition, okay, for the opportunity. It wasn't like I was just, you know, hired to write Holly Woodlawn's autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
An agent got involved, and I wanted I wanted first crack at the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do my sample chapter,
Mm-hmm.
and that which is the first chapter of A Low Life in High Heels. And and so I wrote the sample chapter, and I mean it was within that day when I first banged it out, I knew it was special, and I knew it was going to make a great independent movie. It was just rich. It was a very, very rich story, you know.
Yeah.
And so when I turned in my sample chapter, and long story short, I got the opportunity to write the whole book, and me and Holly were very, very excited about the possibility of it becoming a movie.
Yeah.
So, but what happened was, ironically, something very, well, sadly, something very, very horrible happened.
Oh.
And it threw everything into a tailspin. So I don't want to go too much into it because
Okay.
I don't want to spoil the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So A Low Life in High Heels is Holly's autobiography that you helped her write, correct?
that's
You,
correct. I was her collaborator.
all right. And you know, when I think of the title, I think of that Traffic song, The Low Spark of High Heeled Boys. Uh
Yeah, yeah, you mentioned that, and I actually YouTubed that song so I could hear it. Um,
no
to be honest,
influence, yeah.
um, the working title of our book proposal was called "On the Wild Side," um,
Okay.
right, from "Walk on the Wild
Yeah.
Side," and that one night, you know, we're working on a chapter, and Holly was talking about Jackie Curtis, who was a wonderful playwright and one of Andy Warhol's trans superstars. And Holly said that Jackie Curtis was a low life on a high heel. And so I wrote it down, I put it in the chapter. Well, many months later, our editor, his name was Michael Denneny, he was quite a force. He read that line, and he's the one who said, you know what? I think we should call this book A Low Life in High Heels. Now, at first, I wasn't, our agent wasn't too keen on that. And I kind of wondered, oh, do we really want to go with that title? Because we'd worked so hard to elevate Holly's image. Because a lot of people said or thought Holly was a mess,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
And this book was her chance it was her big comeback.
Yeah. To shine.
Right. And at first we weren't quite sure, is this going to make the right impression? But it was such a good title. And Holly said, let's just go with it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened.
I like that phrase. I love it. And that's one of
Yeah.
that's actually one of my favorite songs. Um, the Low Spark of High Heel Boys by Traffic. That has nothing to do with the title, but anyway. um, so, is there like talk of a movie about Holly? Is that in your
Well,
future?
that's complicated.
Yeah.
That be-
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that became a complicated can of worms. And you know what I'd really love to see? I'll tell you what I'd love to see.
hmm
I'd love to see Love You Madly Holly Woodlawn, right?
hmm
Which takes place when Holly's a middle-aged person,
hmm
42.
Okay.
I'd love to see that developed as a musical stage play. And I would love to see Jane Lynch play Holly Woodlawn
Oh my goodness. All
because
right.
Jane Lynch is hilarious. Holly
Yes.
was hilarious. If you look at them, there's a very close resemblance,
Really.
especially if you look at Jane Lynch when she's doing Annie on Broadway,
Mm-hmm.
as she's playing Miss Hannigan. You see what Jane Lynch looks like, and you see what Holly looks like when we were worked together, like 1992.
Yeah.
I just thought, and plus Jane Lynch, you know, when Holly wasn't in drag, because by the time I came along, Holly was gender fluid. Sometimes she was a woman, sometimes she was a man. So you need somebody who can look like Holly
Mm-hmm.
drag.
Yeah. Jane could pull that off.
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
could. I think she would be fantastic.
yeah. I mean, she does that right now in Murders in the Building, right?
I don't know. I haven't seen that. What is
Oh,
that?
yeah, that's a great TV show with Martin Short and Steve Martin and Selena Gomez
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so the three of them like solve murders and have a podcast about solving murders. And Jane
That's
Lynch
interesting.
plays Steve Martin's stunt double. In it was an old like cop show that he was on, and she was his stunt double in the show. And so yeah, it's really the relationships are just great. And so
That's hilarious.
yeah.
Where does this air?
What is it on? Is it on? It might be on Apple TV. I am not
I'll be
sure.
darned.
Yeah.
Because
Um.
here's my ugly confession. Okay, I don't have a TV.
Okay. All right.
That terrible? Yeah.
No, no, that's great. Do you? I guess you read a lot or do other
I
things.
I do read a lot. I tend to start books and not finish them. This is terrible, right?
Uh huh.
But I'm have you heard of Scott Alexander Hess?
Yeah.
He's wonderful. So I'm reading this one, River Runs Red,
Okay.
right? I'm halfway into that.
Great.
I'm halfway into Felice Picano, Justifying My Sins.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Cynthia Carr's wonderful book on Candy Darling. I'm on page 100 of that. That's riveting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Cool.
then, if that's not enough, then I've got Christopher Soden's poems, Tempting God, which this is fantastic. So
Wow.
I do read a lot,
Yeah.
but, I don't have time to watch.
Yeah. I know. I that's one of my New Year's like goals for 2025 is to watch less TV and read more. Um. So, but I was wrong. It is on Hulu TV.
Oh, Hulu. Well, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So it's a great show. But
Yeah.
so I also I wanted to talk about um for Love You Madly Holly Woodlawn. You have some unusual book promos.
Oh
Um
my goodness.
yeah.
I forgot about those. Yes.
Can you tell us about those? Tell our listeners.
My book promos. Yeah. Well, okay, so here's the deal. I started creating these promos when I was hustling for a publisher. All
Okay.
right.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't get any attention. And first of all, I don't know if you've ever experienced this or if you know of somebody, but when you're submitting your manuscripts to a publishing house or to an agent, because I don't have an agent.
Mhm.
Okay. I lost my agent. She ran off to Europe. Um, it can take a year to get a response.
Really?
Oh my God. I remember I had one publisher I was dealing with, and I submitted the manuscript, and right away I got positive feedback about how much the editor was enjoying it. And I was so excited. And then it was crickets.
Oh.
And I thought, well, okay, I'll just let them sit with it for a while. I'm not going to just sit with one publisher. I'm going to keep hustling.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm hustling other publishers, agents, whatnot. And then finally, I guess it was about 6 months later, I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, did you did you ever finish Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn?" And he basically wrote back and said, "Yeah, it's really not for us." And I'm like, "Well, gosh, why didn't you tell me that?" You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would do is when I was waiting for these responses, which took forever to get,
Mhm.
I would create book promos. And I would go on Pond 5, which, they license royalty free music.
Okay.
And I would find music that, kind of captured a certain theme in the story. Because it's not just one theme, there's many themes
Mhm.
in that book,
Okay. Mhm.
And I just had a ball doing them. And I think they're all so different. And if, I'm not even sure, I just think they're fun. And they kept me creative and kept me hopeful And I thought they were great. I don't know
That's
if anybody
awesome.
else
That's
did.
awesome. And where can our listeners check these out? Are they on YouTube?
I
Um,
created a Holly Woodlawn channel on YouTube.
oh, cool,
Yeah. Well,
cool.
it's a Love You Madly Holly Woodlawn channel.
Okay, all right. So, listeners, you have got to check out these promos. They're very unusual. I don't think that you're going to see book promos like this anywhere else. They're
That's
great.
exact. They're out of control, aren't they? I mean, they're just like whack.
They're great, though. They're absolutely great.
Well,
Uh,
thank you. They're all so different, and that's what I like about them.
yeah, yeah. And I think that um, that is a nice aspect to them because a lot of promos are just kind of run of the mill, same thing. Even though they may be a little different, they're all the same in nature. I guess I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
well, the book promos I've seen, they're nothing like this. These are
Yeah,
just totally different,
yeah, yeah.
And I'll tell you what I really love about this book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure if you had a chance to see them, but every chapter kicks off with a montage of old movie posters that foreshadow what's to come.
Oh,
So, yeah,
that's cool.
it's because this is a Hollywood story. It's
Yeah,
about my relationship with Holly Woodlawn, but
yeah,
it takes place in Hollywood. And I thought I really want to celebrate, you know, the history of Hollywood.
yeah.
And so each chapter kicks off with this fantastic montage,
Oh,
and it
that's
also has really beautiful portraits of Holly. There's a nice center section with some gorgeous color portraits of Holly that no one has ever seen.
oh nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Is that Holly on the wall behind you?
Holly is behind me. Oh, like right over here,
There and
there. Now this is a portrait. That's an antique painting.
yeah,
There's a few of them of Holly in here,
nice. So
and this one.
listeners, Jeff has his video on and I could see his office and he
Yeah.
has some really cool portraits of Holly hanging on his wall.
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, Holly meant the world to me.
Oh,
And Holly was the first person in Los Angeles to give me a chance. I'd
oh,
been, struggling in those trenches for 3 years by the time I'd met Holly.
yeah.
And it was hard and it was brutal. And, you get so, all you want someone to do is read your script,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and,
And Holly knew
and no
about
one ever did.
struggle, you know?
What was that?
Holly knew about struggle.
She knew about struggle. And I'll tell you, we just clicked.
Oh,
She was compassionate. I was kind.
yeah.
Now she was also an ex-con.
Yeah. Yeah.
She had a criminal past.
Yeah.
It's kind of paradoxical because there were things Holly did that I would have never done,
Yeah.
because she was pretty unscrupulous.
Well, she probably was in survival mode for most of her life. And
Yes.
sometimes when you're in that mode, you do things that you wouldn't normally do just to get by and keep on living.
Right. And, because Holly was 16 years old when he ran away from home,
Yeah.
because he ran away from home as a boy,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that there's some arrested development going on there.
Probably. Yep. I would imagine he's out on the streets,
Oh God.
selling his soul, right?
Yeah. No, that was
Um,
just terrible.
yeah. Yep. And back then there were not like, today there are some, hostels and some, kind of like shelters that cater to LGBTQ plus youth. Back then there weren't at all.
No, there weren't any. And some of my favorite chapters in A Low Life in High Heels are when we're writing about those early days when Holly's living with, these other uh, kid prostitutes and the drag queens and how they all pulled together.
Yeah.
you know?
That's so
I
cool.
mean, you know what it was? It was every parent's nightmare.
Oh, that's funny. That makes me laugh. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
bet
but
you.
seriously, now here's the thing. So that book, I'm surprised that hasn't been banned, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's lots to be learned in that book.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna go check that out. I haven't seen that yet.
What, a
So
low life in high heels?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I hope they
definitely.
have it at the library. It kept getting stolen from the West Hollywood Library in Los
Really?
Angeles. Yeah.
Oh my
They had a
goodness.
hard time keeping it on the shelves.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that
Wow.
funny? And now they're so crazy expensive. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They are. Yep.
Yeah.
So, what what do you do when you're not writing, Jeff?
What do I do when I'm not writing?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I have that nudie review that I do on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so here's the truth. Here's a little tip for all the older writers who are over 50,
Uh-huh.
right? And you know, when you're over 50, health insurance is cost prohibitive if you've got to buy it yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when I moved back here to the boondocks, right, to look after my parents,
Mm-hmm.
um, I thought about working in television, and I actually applied for a few jobs, but it just didn't pan out. And then COVID hit, and that was a big nightmare. So I got a job at a grocery store.
Uh-huh.
I got a job as a stock clerk,
Oh, cool.
right? The lowest thing you could do.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like $9 an hour. And the reason why I did it was because I just wanted something to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at the time, I really wasn't thinking of, I had started Love You Madly Holly Woodlawn in like 2016, but it was during COVID when I picked it up again because of the lockdown. But
Yeah.
I was going to this grocery store. And what I discovered was at the grocery store, it
Mm.
didn't matter if you were 20 years old or 80 years old, you got excellent health insurance through your union for $9 a week.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
No.
I
That's
know,
that's unheard of.
unheard of.
Yeah.
$9 a week, and it was excellent.
Wow.
Um, and so I think I'm going to be working at that grocery store for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
because the unions, like that grocers union,
Yeah.
it's a pretty big union.
Huh. I didn't even know there was a grocers union. Like
Yeah,
yeah, cuz you never hear, talk about them. Um
I know people don't talk about it.
they don't go on strike or anything.
They have, but we haven't. But in the past, I remember when I was living in Los Angeles, they went on strike.
Huh.
And I would not cross the picket line. I went to Trader Joe's, so because they're non-union. But
Okay.
so I just thought working at a grocery store would be really pleasant.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it?
during Well, I like what I'm doing because you know what? It's kind of like it's real easy work. I had a very stressful career. I worked for like 25 years in television as a producer, and then I worked in real estate for 5 in Los Angeles.
Mm.
And these were high pressure, high stress,
Oh yeah.
always on the tightrope
Yep.
kind of jobs.
Yeah.
And when I came out here, I thought I just want to do something. I want to go back to high school. I want to, something easy,
Yeah, yeah.
a stupid little menial job. And so what I loved about it was I could be, in aisle 3 stacking up green beans.
Mhm.
But what I was really thinking about was the paragraph I was writing for Love You Madly Hollywood Lawn.
Yeah, I can imagine that the work is just you know, kind of robotic, right? So
Kind of robotic,
you don't have to think
and
about it.
it was perfect for a writer. When I was working in television, I would never write. what would happen, the best years of television was when I was working 9 months. I'd work on a series and I'd do 9 months in production. I'd have 3 months off and I'd write screenplays.
Mm-hmm.
And so that worked out really well. But I couldn't write a book or a screenplay when I was in production. In fact, I used to work for Pee Wee Herman and I was
Did
offered.
you?
What?
Did you? You worked for Pee
I
Wee?
did.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I worked on his well, first Pee Wee Herman kept me from being homeless. I mean, I worked for him in 1986 briefly at his fan club, and then I worked for him in 1988 on the circus movie Big Top Pee Wee.
Yeah.
And then he called me to do, I guess it was the last season of the Playhouse.
Uh-huh.
And this is before the big scandal. And
Uh,
I had to turn it down. I couldn't work for Paul Rubens on a TV series and write Holly Woodlawn story.
yeah.
It
Yeah.
was impossible.
I can see where that would be so difficult because it takes so much energy. That
Right.
you don't have a lot
Right.
left over, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and also I was tired of being a production assistant or an assistant,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and I wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I chose, be a writer for Holly Woodlawn. Now, that sounds easy, right? It was a harrowing journey because getting that book sold it took a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, in hindsight, I could have worked for Paul. I could have done the Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse and done the Holly Woodlawn book later.
Well,
But
yeah.
I didn't realize that at the time,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I had some wonderful Hollywood experiences.
Oh, that's so cool. I will have to tell my nephew. My nephew Ryan loves Pee Wee Herman. Um,
Really?
oh yeah,
Oh,
he probably has one of his original Pee Wee Herman dolls. When he was a kid, he absolutely loved Pee Wee Herman. And he still does. My nephew has a podcast. Um, it's called The Rad Years, and it's all about the '80s.
oh,
Um, yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, one of my big regrets is I wanted Paul to read this book um, years ago. And I thought about sending it I didn't have his contact information any longer, but I thought about sending it to his lawyer. And I thought, yeah, just wait till it's polished. Wait till you get a publishing deal. Wait.
Hmm.
And then he died,
Yeah.
so that was unfortunate. But
Yeah.
I have nothing but good things to say about him. That was a wonderful experience working on that movie.
Oh,
I loved it.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
good to hear. Good to
it was
hear.
good. He was a
So
sweetheart.
yeah. So you probably have so many stories. You should write your own memoir.
Well, it's funny, I wrote about 100 pages were cut out of Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn because it took so long to get to Holly. She wasn't coming in till like page 160
Ah,
because there was so much going on with my adventures in Hollywood. One of my favorite Hollywood stories, I got to share this with you. Do you know
uh-huh.
who Shelley Winters
Oh
is?
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So there I was. I'm working on this TV show as a production assistant. It's called Brothers. It was a landmark series, gay series on Showtime. The big irony is this is a gay TV show run by straight men. There was no gay writers. They
Wow.
had one gay consultant. His name was Danny Kreitzberg that they brought in, and I think he probably wrote one episode. But I was closeted. I didn't feel comfortable being out.
That's sad,
Right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I had gotten, and they told me you're never going to write for this show, so don't even try. So I'd gotten distracted with the possibility of working in horror movies because my neighbor on the Paramount lot, her name was Deborah Hill, and she was a very famous powerhouse producer. She was the producer who wrote and produced Halloween with John Carpenter.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I thought, okay, Deborah Hill skyrocketed on horror movies. I'm going to write a horror movie, and I wrote this movie, and I wanted Shelley Winters as the lead role, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and long story short, I couldn't get to Shelley Winters. No one was giving me the time of day. So one day, it's Saturday, I'm at the Ralph's supermarket in Beverly Hills, and I'm standing in the express lane, and this little disheveled person, okay, who's I couldn't make out if it was a man or just this looked like a homeless person,
Mm-hmm.
turns around and says, "Honey, can you open this this plastic this container of nuts for me? It was a little pouch of nuts." She said, "Can you open this for me? Plastic has ruined the world." And I'm like, "Holy shit, I didn't recognize her face. I
Uh-huh.
recognized her voice." I'm like, "This is Shelley
Oh
Winters."
my gosh.
So
Wow.
long story short, she invited me over to her house. I
Wow.
told her about my script. She said, "Honey, you just bring that script by this address today at 2 p.m. and we'll talk about it."
Wow. That's
I
so
went over to Shelley.
cool.
Isn't that amazing? So I went over to Shelley Winter's house. She had a duplex in Beverly Hills on Oakhurst, and we hung out and we talked about the script I had written, and it was just magical. And you know what she told me? Shelley Winters was so honest. And she said, "Honey, I've done horror.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do any more horror. I want to do drama."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Holy shit, I'm going to write Shelley Winters a drama,"
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And basically what I did was I wrote Holly Woodlawn a drama.
Oh,
But
that's
Shelley Winters had got that ball rolling.
yeah. That's so cool. I'm just looking up Brothers. There were 5 seasons of that show, and some really famous, actors on it too.
Oh, goodness, yes, lots of famous actors. It was really something. Every week there was a big star, Robert Stack, Jimmy Coco, Fran Ryan, who was wonderful. It just, it
Yeah.
was a trip.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can find that, like, streaming. I'm sure I can. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The only thing I didn't like about it is
Hmm.
I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like I could be myself,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That is really sad that it was centered around a gay character. Um, and yet,
Hello, I know. And yeah,
yeah.
I mean, there wasn't, like I said, it was a gay show run by straight men.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I would love to say that would never happen today, but I can't absolutely say that because it could happen. I'm sure it could happen.
I'm sure it could,
Yeah.
you know?
So,
Um,
so Jeff, I want to ask you, where can our listeners get a copy of Love You Madly, Hollywood Lawn? Is it
well,
available wherever books are
so
sold?
yes, this book launches on February 11th
Mm-hmm.
and it'll go nationwide. So you can go to the independent booksellers, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, but I would recommend
Mm-hmm.
they go to Feral House. It's www.feralhouse.com. And the reason why I recommend that is that's my publisher, and they gave me 50 book plates to sign that they
Mm-hmm.
would stick in the book.
Oh,
But
cool.
I was so grateful for this opportunity that I actually hand colored those book plates and made them really special. I mean, there's a video about them on YouTube. They're an absolute riot. And there's one thing I've got to say before we quit is Feral House almost didn't pick this book up.
Wow. That's
That's not the
sad.
point I wanted.
No
Sorry, Anita.
worries. No worries, Jeff. So
Yeah.
what made them change their mind or decide to?
Okay. Well, so here's what happened, and this is like my parting words for the listeners, right?
Okay.
Is don't take no for an answer
Oh.
because I thought Feral House would be a wonderful publisher because I read a book they had published about Vampira. Do you know who Vampira
I
is?
do not know.
Okay, so Vampira she was like the television's first horror hostess. in the 1950s.
Oh.
And she starred in a Ed Wood movie, or she appeared in an Ed Wood movie called Plan 9 from Outer Space. And so she was a big cult figure.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And right. And so Feral House published her niece wrote a book about her. I bought it. I read it. It was wonderful. I loved it. And they had also done a book about the movie director Ed Wood, who was really kind of wacky.
Yeah.
So I thought this publisher is perfect for Holly Woodlawn. She's a cult figure. She's kind of, out there on, fringe. And so I sent them my proposal and they didn't respond.
Oh.
It was like crickets.
Wow.
So I'm waiting. I wait, my 6 weeks, nothing. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go through the back door. I'm going to reach out to them with a licensing request. And so I wrote to them. Coincidentally, Vampira also appears in my book, Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn.
Oh, cool.
She was my neighbor. So I reached out to Feral
That's
House
awesome.
and I said, hey, I got Vampira in my book. I'd like to use a picture of her. How do I go about licensing this? Well, I got a response immediately.
Really?
Yeah. So the publisher responded and she said, here's what you got to do, blah, blah, blah. And then I wrote back, oh, thank you so much for the information. By the way, I submitted my proposal for Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn, and you guys never responded. I'm kind of surprised,
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote me back and she said, this really isn't something we're interested in. It would have to be reworked substantially to suit our needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of left the door open
Mm-hmm.
and waited for other rejections to come through. And by the time you get all the rejections, you kind of know, okay, you start connecting the dots and realizing that there's just too much in the front end, too much struggle, because I wound up homeless. I was sleeping in squalor with roaches crawling over me. No one wants to read that shit.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, and a good publisher will tell you that, right?
Right. And so I just sucked all that out and I resubmitted. And the publisher within like 6 weeks later, she wrote back and said, you know what? This is a lot better, but there's still some work that needs to be done. And if you're, amenable to these changes, we'll come forward with a contract. Oh. So I said, give me, 6 weeks, I'll have your new draft.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you kept pursuing them and it worked out for you. And I love your words to leave with our listeners. Don't take no for an answer.
Don't take no for an answer. And don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because had I just gone the traditional way, I thought, well, just go to him with a licensing request. Open the door.
Yeah.
But throughout my entire Hollywood career, I had to think outside the box. I mean,
I'm sure.
I could not. Do you know how I broke into Paramount? Oh my God. Well, I wrote Pee Wee Herman a letter of congratulations, and I told him he won me in a clearinghouse giveaway. And that's how I broke into Paramount Pictures.
Oh my goodness.
Because I could not get a job.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was so difficult because I was not prepared to go up against all the USC and UCLA film grads,
Yeah.
It was tough. So you have to think outside the box and kind of find your edge and really sharpen it. And my edge was I was assertive and a little crazy.
You have to be. You have to be because there are only so many positions available, and you have thousands of people, right, wanting that position, that you have to think outside the box because, doing it the same old is not going to get you that job.
Exactly. It's true.
Yeah. So good for you, Jeff. Good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you, Anita Kelly. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. So that is all the time we have for today. But I would like to thank our guest, Jeff Copeland, whose book that is called Love You Madly, Holly Woodlawn. It is out to the masses on February 11th, but go to feralhouse.com and you can purchase it through the publisher with a little happy gift inside from Jeff. So thanks again, Jeff. And
thank you. This has been delightful.
Yes, it really has. And you are welcome back anytime. But that is all the time we have for today. I'm Anita Kelly, and thanks for joining. Let's talk about books, baby. So until next time, may your journey be lighthearted, peace be plenty, and be safe, folks.